Benchmark, the voice of business. Presented by LMD.
On this edition of Benchmark, education is under the microscope today, and we are delighted to welcome to the program Sanjeev Jayaratnam, the Chief Transformational Wizard of Revelations Professional Education, to give us his take on Sri Lanka's education sector. Up next, LMD columnist Hasita Premaratna updates us on how the stock market is faring. And in our final segment, we talk to Travis Gomez, Product Head of Frontier Research, about the performance of the tourism industry in recent months. That's the lineup for Benchmark.
Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Benchmark. I'm Savitri Rodrigo. How can our education system be geared to transform Sri Lanka into a knowledge-based economy? Then, what reforms are needed to improve the quality of our education system to match that of other countries? Now, these are some of the questions I will be putting to Sanjeev Jayaratnam, the Chief Transformational Wizard of Revelations Professional Education. That sounds very impressive, Sanjeev.
I think it's meant to be.
Just to start off, how would you rate Sri Lanka's education system?
Okay, so Savitri, in order to answer that question, let me just tell you a little bit of my background in education. I think that might make it more relevant. I have actually been lecturing for about 18 years in different, Morato University, Jagadhanapura University, Imperial Institute, IIT, SLIIT, places like that. And I also work a lot with teenagers. So, given all of this experience, something that I have seen over the years has been we are extremely exam oriented. Yeah. And whether it's students at a bachelor's level, students at a master's level, and even sometimes students at like a CEO level who are following an MBA or something like that, most of what they want to know is what kind of questions will come at the exam. And looking back at when I was also studying, I was not that exam oriented, but still what we were taught was all about, okay, getting through this exam, yeah? But not so much about what is the knowledge that we should have, what should we be learning.
The practical part.
Yeah, because now actually, if you interview people who have an MBA, for example, there are thousands who probably have MBAs. But do they have the knowledge? So when you interview people or you talk to people, you see they have the paper qualification, but not really anything further.
Beyond that, yeah.
So when they actually get into a job, they actually can't do very much, which maybe degrades the entire qualification itself. Yeah, and also because lots of these institutions are trying to get more students because it's a very commercial operation. Yeah. But what sometimes we are forced to do as lecturers is pass the students, even if they are not at a level to be passed. Because if you don't, the next intake you might not have students. Yeah, so bring the pass mark down. Yeah, somehow pass people. So that also doesn't do much for the standard of learning. Then.
So Sanjeev, while what you say is quite true, and we are seeing it as we speak. What are the key strengths of a Sri Lankan education?
That's a tough one. Right, so I work with Methodist College, and I have been there for about 9 years now, seeing a bunch of teenage girls come through, right? So one of the good things is that there is a lot of discipline, there is a lot of respect, and I think those are still really important values and something that is, I think, dominant in Sri Lanka. Here and there we find that it's been lost a little bit, but I think those type of values are really good. And fundamentally the kids, actually all they need is someone to inspire them, someone to show them the way, and then they're really interested in learning. Yeah, for example, so at Methodist College, I train the choir, so nothing really academic there. But while doing that, I bring in a lot of other things. I teach them about science, I teach them about quantum physics, right, about energy, and because that's all relevant, right? And you must see how these girls actually just suck up all this information. So a really good teacher can make any subject interesting, isn't it? Yeah. So one of the problems is we don't seem to have that many goods anymore.
Inspire.
Good teachers anymore, and that's I think a lot to do with economics there, because I don't know whether I'm right, but I heard that in Germany they are trying to pay the teachers really high salaries, yeah, because they say, okay, the future is there. Like if you're a good teacher, you're going to have a good generation. But here sometimes we find that the teachers are the people who, well, there are the really good teachers still. There are the really dedicated, committed teachers, but sometimes the pay is just not enough to attract the really good people, isn't it? Otherwise, I would be a full-time teacher.
So, in the government's Vision 2025 document, it says education and skills development are currently inadequate to sustain growth through knowledge-based competitive economic activities. Now, how can our education system be geared to transform Sri Lanka into this knowledge-based economy?
I think fundamentally we have to stop teaching the children to memorize, because it's all about that, isn't it? It's get through the exam, somehow get all this knowledge in, cram, Are we teaching them to think? Because if in a knowledge-based economy, we need people to think. I used to work at IFS, and we used to recruit software engineers from all over the country. And getting a really good software engineer who's technically sound, technically among the best in the world, is not difficult. We do have some fantastic people. But most of them will just do what you ask them to do. Right? They will not think for themselves and say, okay, yes, that's what you're asking me to do, but I think I can do it better. Here's another way we can do this. And that's what we really need. We need people who want to challenge. So I have been doing a lot of corporate training as well. And here I keep asking the groups, okay, ask me questions, challenge me, say something. And they don't. And that's because that's the whole upbringing, right? We don't want to challenge, we don't want to think, we just want to take whatever is given. And also sometimes if you do challenge the teacher, you're told, okay, be quiet, type of thing, right? And that happens when you get to office as well. And then when you're told, okay, now be innovative, come up with ideas, be creative, they have no idea how to do that. Unless they are self-driven and they are reading and they are trying to do various things. Of course, you do get those type of people as well, but not as many as we actually need. So I would think thinking, how do you think, really unleashing that whole thing.
And how would you bring that into the system?
So it's just, I think one could be just change the way that we are teaching, instead of being, I'm not sure if I was using the right word, being more prescriptive, but more, okay, so this is how something happens, what do you think? How would you change it? What would be different?
So basically telling them no right, no wrong, just think for yourself and bring out the solution.
Of course, something like science, there is a right and wrong, but even that, making it more by drawing the knowledge out of the kids, getting them to think, forcing them to think, without the teacher giving all the answers at once. That forces the kids to think, right? Sometimes I do that. I say, okay, no, son, we are not moving on until you give me an answer. And then the answers come. So we have to make that change somehow to get people to think.
And do you think our system is geared to make that change?
No, not really. Not at all. So my youngest son is doing the O-levels this year. And when I look at some of those books, I don't understand head or tail of it. Right? So what are we trying to do? And we are trying to make this thing such a big challenge, whereas it should be, okay, you learn and you get through something, but not to put so much pressure on the child. And actually the parents' fault as well, right? We all putting so much pressure on the children that they stop doing other things, which is also part of education, extracurricular, sports, activities, societies, all that is like all the character forming stuff, isn't it? That's what is going to take you ahead in life. How do you communicate? How do you stand up in front of an audience and talk? How do you manage a team? How do you lead? All of that stuff, really, really important. But sometimes we compromise on those things. We stop the kids doing those things and send them for a few extra tuition classes. Yeah. And the ridiculous thing is that there are some kids who are going for multiple tuition classes for the same subject. So are we losing our way here? And even the scholarship exam is the same thing, isn't it? Such a lot of pressure on a 10-year-old, on an 11-year-old. And for what?
In the World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Report, Sri Lanka is ranked 60th for the quality of its education system. Now we are behind India, who is 26, and even Bhutan, which is at 30th. What reforms do you think are needed to improve the quality of our education to match those of other countries, or at least those in this region?
So, well, this is just purely from my experience. And so what I think is, well, we'll have to start right from the lower grades, the lower grades, and see actually what subjects need to be taught to these children, so that they can actually make use of them in the real world. For example, something like communication is not taught at all, and that's key, isn't it? And even if we take something like linked language that is taught, they are not taught how to speak. And what's the point of teaching a language if you can't communicate by speaking? Right? The kids are taught to write, yeah, and that also not very well. But we need to be able to speak, right? So half our problems will be solved if we can actually speak. So why not just do the speaking, and then relook at all the subjects that we are teaching these children. What is relevant? What is not? What is really going to help them?
So we're going to take a short break now. When we return, we ask Sanjeev Jayaratnam for his thoughts on the role of the private sector in developing our education system and how the adoption of new technologies will impact education. Just stay with us.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
$8,500 done. 1,500 go. Hoorah!
What on earth are you doing?
I'm making money.
You're crazy.
Crazy for money. 10,000 steps done. Who the man? I do it every single day. Show me the money.
So you run 10,000 steps every day, huh? You must be fit.
Some days I do 20,000. Hoorah!
You're with Benchmark, and we are discussing Sri Lanka's education system with the Chief Transformational Wizard of Revelations Professional Education, Sanjeev Jayaratnam. Sanjeev, we did speak briefly about how there are children who finish A-levels who go out into doing higher education in different institutions. So what is the role of the private sector in developing the education sector?
So I think one thing that we see happening in the IT sector is that lots of the companies actually offers for students, and I think that's very valuable. Yeah, because they come into industry, they actually do some real work, and then they go back sometimes and finish their degree, or sometimes it might be towards the end of the degree, and I think that's really useful. But I'm not sure whether it's only in IT that is happening. In IT is happening for sure, and it has been happening from the early 90s. So that's a lot of that stuff, and lots of the larger IT companies actually support this a lot. And then also because there's a lot of competition, and they are trying to recruit these fresh graduates once they go back and finish, right? So then they get a head start on getting some of the best people into their companies. So I think internship is something pretty important. Also, maybe by getting involved, helping these the students with some projects, right? Maybe investing a little bit in some projects that will then give back some return to that particular company. We find some companies doing that as well, but probably could be more.
On the other side, we have seen private education institute go under the be literally thrown under the bus with the medical item. So now, would the private sector be open to investing, realizing that there is no stability at the end of the day?
Yes, that's a problem, isn't it? So once we have a policy, we should have a policy for forever, not that it changes whenever the government changes, isn't it?
Then here's the other side, another side of higher education, vocational and technical programs. Do we have sufficient of those going for students who are not too academically inclined?
I think there are, but I'm not really too sure about that. I do think there are.
How important is it to have that segment
I think
covered?
that's also really important, but again it needs a mindset change, because sometimes we think those type of jobs are not as important as the other ones, and maybe they might be looked down on in certain sectors, where the more traditional people are still looking at their kids to be doctors, engineers, lawyers, that type of thing. Although that's like drastically changing, isn't it? We can find so many different careers today. We don't have to actually go through any of those mainstream things and have a fantastic career. So I think mindset change. Again, just to take an example from the IT industry, some IT companies, there's a big difference between how QA engineers are looked at and software engineers are looked at. Yeah, so QA engineers are looked at as being below software engineers, whereas it should not be the case. It should be, if at all, it should be the same or the reverse. So some of these, again, mindset changes, I think, to have more people going into vocational training. And it's equally important, I think, even more so.
Now, the Ministry of Education at the University of California recently signed an MOU to create digital learning programs aimed at training teachers to overcome technical challenges. What you brought up earlier about actually having teachers being empowered enough with knowledge to pass it down to their students. Mainly to promote e-learning, because I think since we don't have as many teachers to go around the country, e-learning would be the way. How can the adoption of new technology actually be used, maximized for this sector's development?
Well, it's a fantastic resource. Given that most people today have access to digital media and the smartphones and all that, I don't know how widespread it is and how many people actually do have access, but it's a great thing. And well, lots of my learning I do through resources like Coursera or something like that while I'm actually driving. So this it's a huge resource, and it can greatly augment the students' learning without maybe having to go for another tuition class, because then you can pick the particular area that you are not sure of and learn that sometimes maybe from one of the best lecturers in the world on that particular subject. So they can put it across so much better. Yeah. So the resources are available. If somebody does want to learn, it's so widely available and mostly free.
True.
Mostly free.
And you were also talking about creating an innovative mindset. So how can innovation be encouraged in this sector?
In education, again, it's by challenging the kids, the undergrads or whoever it is. Yeah, so not being too eager to give all the answers, but forcing them to think, and if they don't think, they don't come up with a good answer, they don't get a good mark. So I teach business process re-engineering at Moratuwa. I've been doing it for about 10 years now. And one of the things, it's a master's level program. They have to do a project towards the end of the course, where they go into an organization, a real organization, and they have to pick up a process and actually re-engineer it and come and present their findings. So they actually have to be creative. They have to apply the knowledge. It's not just learning and like the theories. Apply it into the real world, into a real organization, and then actually calculate the return on investment and stuff like that, and show us why there is value there. So you challenge them. And actually at any age, if we challenge, because I work with kids from 4 and upwards, at any age, they can be challenged. And they want to be challenged. And they should be.
Thank you very much. It's been great talking to you, Sanjeev.
It's a pleasure as always, Savitri. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
So we've been chatting to Sanjeev Jayaratnam, who is the Chief Transformational Wizard of Revelations Professional Education. He has been giving us some key learnings as well as some key insights and opinions on Sri Lanka's education sector. On the other side is Anushan Selvaraja with more.
Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
Done. 1,500 go. Hoorah!
What on earth are you doing?
I'm making money.
You're crazy.
Crazy for money. $10,000 steps done. Who the man? I do it every single day. Show me the money.
So you run 10,000 steps every day, huh? You must be fit.
Some days I do 20,000. Hoorah!
Welcome back to Benchmark. I'm Sanjeev Jayaratnam. Now for a closer look at the latest on the post. Joining me is market analyst and LMD columnist Jayaratnam. Welcome back to the show, Hasta. Now, recently the Japanese bank Nomura Holdings said that Sri Lanka is one of 7 countries who could be facing an exchange rate crisis. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, there is nothing new, first of all. I mean, we've seen the repayment of foreign debt as a challenge for the next 3 to 4 years, primarily because we have borrowed in the last few years so much of foreign dollar borrowings and invested into assets which have not yet yielded any return. We're talking about the Hambantota port, talking about the airport in Hambantota and many other infrastructure which have not yielded any return. So naturally that's going to have an impact on the economy. This was known even a few years back. And I think more, compared to a couple of years ago to today, I think we have more certainty and more clarity that there is a plan in place from government and central bank to oblige to these repayments on a timely manner and to ensure that the repayments will go. So on that front, when you look at it, the debt repayment is under control, the dollar cash flow is pretty much in shape, and there is a significant drive towards increasing the exports. and obviously looking at how to manage the import structure better. So I think the balance of payments management is the real crux of it, and the bigger conversation around it is how much of FDIs will continue to come. Last year with the port city we saw almost a record amount of FDIs came into the country, and that momentum, whether we can keep it continuing, is the real question that one would have. But I think so far, even this year, we've seen ADB coming in with pledges, IMF money has come in, and China continues to be investing in the country, and obviously there are conversations with India and other countries as well towards foreign investment. So I think it will be very important to see the viability of the Sri Lankan manufacturing in particular, which will be also supported by the FTAs that the government is currently talking about with GSP Plus, with China, with India, and also with Vietnam and a few other countries that we are, Indonesia, that we are currently talking about. Now, these are important discussions, because ultimately if we keep improving the exports, of the viability of the country's manufacturing base can be checked and looked at. So my view in this situation is that it's not really a crisis that we have not known. We've seen it. One would call it a crisis, but other would not call it a crisis. So it's not a big deal. But having said that, this type of statistical calculations and publications naturally create uncertainty in markets and create a little bit of a bang on the whole system, which is a little disappointing. But other than that, I think government has a fairly good plan, and the central bank has planned out how to make the repayments and keep things going. So overall, whole of the world have seen, or all emerging markets have seen their currencies depreciating, because more than the rupee or the of those currencies depreciating, the dollar has been strengthening. India has reached 72 rupees, which is almost a 12.5% depreciation as opposed to our 6 to 7% depreciation for this year. So I think it's definitely not out of control or in a crisis, but it's something that we need to be mindful and aware and continuously drive FDIs and export growth to ensure that the dollar flow will remain sustainable in the coming years.
But that report led to a lot of stocks being sold by foreign investors, especially in our blue chips. Now, how does the market recover from this?
I think every time this type of news comes, when markets react, there's also buying opportunities that come in the market. So whenever the prices become attractive in these fundamentally sound stocks, I believe that there has to be buying coming in. But having said that, the local investors should get more sort of activated in the market to absorb that liquidity. But foreigners in the last couple of years have been almost close to 50% of the activity level. So I think foreigners selling a little bit have been seen across the emerging markets. In Sri Lanka also we've seen, but overall it's not a major concern at this point of time to manage the liquidity position. But that gives also an opportunity for the bargain hunters to enter at these attractive price levels to gradually accumulate fundamentally sound counters, especially people like EPF, ETF and related government institutions who have been absent in the market for so many months should, I think, start accumulating, because they are looking at it more from a rupee perspective, they are looking at it more from a long-term perspective. So equities in the long term in good companies should give a better return than the fixed income.
How has our market's turnover been so fast?
Yeah, the activity levels have been pretty disappointing in the last 2-3 months, and I think that is partially attributed to the local political uncertainty as well as the economic conditions, and partially because of the global situation as well. But I think the activity in the market should start picking up gradually. We have heard from the government sources and the governor that the EPF will return to the market, which I believe is very important for Sri Lankan market to take a pickup. So in the meantime, foreigners should continue to be relatively active. And this year we've seen almost close to 50% of the market turnover has come from the foreigners. So naturally, that trend maybe, in my opinion, should ideally be in the range of 35%, where the locals should take the balance. Preferably almost 35-40% should be taken by the institutional investors in Sri Lanka, local guys, whom they have been very, very small in their investment portfolios and participation in equities recently. The game is on valuations. Obviously, our market is looking fairly well valued at the moment and very attractive to them. In fact, price earnings ratio stands at about 9.5 times at the moment, which I think is similar to what we had at the time of soon after the war. I think 2009 was the last time I remember seeing a 9.5 times price earning ratio. So obviously we need to see how we should attract investors, both foreign and local, because in the relative context, the market looks quite attractive at the moment on valuation perspective.
Thank you very much for joining us, Hasita.
Thank you.
That was market analyst and LMD columnist Hasita Jayaratnam. We'll be right back after a short commercial break. Stay tuned.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC.
Welcome back to Benchmark. I'm Anushin Selvaraja. Now we're going to take a look at the tourism sector, and joining me from Frontier Research is Travis Gomez. Welcome back to the show, Travis. Now, to start off, how is the tourism sector performing right now?
So right now we've seen like a pickup in the improvement if you take the last 3 months, and actually if you take the tourist arrivals numbers for I think up to August, I think it's been like about, I think cumulatively it's been like about 1.6 million tourists, which is like I think about 12.5% up from what it was last year. So overall it's quite encouraging in terms of the numbers have picked up since compared to what it has been in the last 2 years, where there's been partly because of some weather related disruptions there was a slowdown. So it's encouraging that it's picked up, and actually the government has also feels more confident, and as a result they've actually decided to go and to revise up the tourist arrivals target from this year from 2.5 million to 3 million.
Now, Travis, do you see a difference or a change in the way we're trying to promote this country, or as far as what the government is trying to do?
In terms of what the government has been talking about, so one is in terms of the marketing and the way it's positioned. I think some of the consultants and some of the experts, what they've been saying is that what we need to put out is like a consistent message about, what Sri Lanka is about, what they're trying to portray. So I think the government is starting to get that message, and the industry as a whole as well. I think they're starting to get their act together much more, and at the same time also when it comes to some of these policies, I think they are now starting to realize that Sri Lanka is not the most attractive destination, and I think they are also like looking at trying to take some steps to improve on that. I think they are looking at giving these battery funds to the tourists, to bring down some of the airport levies to make it more affordable. So I think in terms of the direction, it seems the policies, I think some of the policymakers are they seem to be getting what's needed to be done.
Do you see an improvement in things for people to do when they visit this country?
So I think even like the large company, I think they're starting to see that, that's what we need, because in terms of the tourist, the mix, what's happening is we are getting more and more city type of tourists who come to the city, who are like, going for the shopping and the entertainment. So I think even some of the large conglomerates, they're sort of starting to realize that, and because of that, you're kind of, if you look around Colombo, you are seeing more like a pickup in this activity. You have like, food festivals and, street, these music festivals. You have a lot of that kind of activity, which is what you need to sort of, to sustain that attractiveness of the city. So I think some of the companies, even the companies are starting to realize that, And I think there seems to be some encouraging steps that have been taken.
Thank you for joining us, Travis.
Okay, thank you.
That was Travis Gomez of Frontier Research. Thank you for watching Benchmark, and we hope to see you again next time.